The Presidency says it's received the amended version of the state capture report. Now, these are volumes 2 and 3 of the document, which was made available initially back in June. Last week, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo got approval from the High Court sitting in Pretoria to make some corrections. Let's get you a sense of what this means, perhaps a way forward. Bring in CASAC's Executive Director, Lawson, Naidoo. Also joining us is the chair of the Southern African Institute for Responsive and Accountable Governance, that advocate Tseliso. Thipanyane. To both our guests, thanks for your time. It's lovely to have you on the program. Lawson, perhaps let me begin with you. It was a couple of weeks ago that the now Chief Justice Raymond Zondo released a statement around these changes that he needed to make. At the time, he mentioned that no one would be adversely impacted by these changes. It almost sounded like some grammatical errors that needed to be fixed, and apparently testimony from some witnesses that just didn't make it to the report. With that in mind, how worried are you about what this report looks like now that changes have been made and it's been resubmitted to the President?
Good morning, and thank you very much. Yes, there have been changes made to Volume 6, the final volume of the reports, and that has now been sanctioned by the courts, as we know, together with the condemnation of the late submission of those reports to the President in June this year. There are some, in fact, typographical errors that have been fixed, as well as some of the figures that are in the volume dealing with illicit money flows. But as you said, there's the evidence of 2 witnesses that was omitted, which has now been included. And then, of course, the list of recommendations have been updated. These reports were only made public last night, in fact, on the Presidency website. So one would have to go through them to see whether they do, in fact, not materially change anything. But having said all of that, the President is under responsibility to respond to Parliament on the recommendations and findings in the reports by the 22nd of October, because he received the final versions of those reports on the 22nd of June. And so we expect the next step in this process to be the President's response to Parliament.
Yeah, so that's not this Saturday, but the next Saturday. That's when the 22nd of October airs. And I guess, Advocate Thipanyane, it's an opportunity for Parliament to do right, especially when you consider the criticism against the institution, even in this report, about their lack of oversight. What are you expecting to happen after the President finally responds to Parliament about ways through which he's going to respond to these recommendations?
Well, one hopes that the President will come up with meaningful responses to the report in order to address what has happened. We have definitely been carried as a country, and as you rightly point out, Parliament itself was missing in action. So one hopes that Parliament will ultimately play its role here and hold the executive to account. But more importantly, a lot of work has to be done to repair what has been done, but also come up with meaningful recommendations to ensure this thing never happens again. We also have to look into the role of the corporates as to the extent in which they were involved. Well, of course, we know that Zondo focused largely on the state, but clearly it's a two-way street. Corporates were also involved in this mess, and we also have to see exactly what will be done to go after them and recover all the damage which they have also contributed to through this mess.
Yeah. Of course, Lawson, we don't have to wait for the President to say anything to Parliament before work can be done. There have been arrests here and there. I mean, the so-called big fish, for instance, in Transnet, making several court appearances, and many are linking that to what's been uncovered at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. How satisfied are you, given how much time has lapsed, about the kind of headway, or the lack thereof, we've made around the State Capture Commission of Inquiry's report?
Look, I mean, I think there's been a lot of impatience and frustration by the public generally about the slow pace of prosecutions for people implicated in corruption generally, and certainly in more recent times as the reports of the Zondo Commission have been made public. But people need to understand that the National Prosecuting Authority cannot simply take what's in the Zondo Commission reports and present them in court. They have to ensure that proper investigations are done, that the evidence is properly gathered and corroborated before they can bring cases to court. But I think it is welcome that we are beginning to see more and more cases being enrolled, more and more people being charged. And this is something that we hope will continue. And one of the things I would like to hear from the President when he responds to Parliament is how he's going to strengthen the capacity of the hawks of the NPA and the investigating directorate within the NPA, so that they can, double their efforts and ensure more and more people are brought before our courts.
Yeah. For better or for worse, Lawson, so much came out of the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, and we expect that given what we've learned about just how far this web of corruption possibly went. I wonder whether it's worth kind of having the NPA prioritize any particular case. So I'm thinking, for instance, about the Guptas who we're told are still arrested in Dubai, for instance, and whether or not, if there is the challenge of resources and many other constraints, the NPA should consider prioritizing certain cases because of A, symbolically what that would look like, and B, sending through a strong message around the cost really of being the so-called architect of something like state capture.
Look, I think we would all have a list of priorities of cases that we would like to see prosecuted, but I think we need to be very careful that we must respect the prosecutorial independence of the National Prosecuting Authority, that they need to make judgment calls on prioritization of cases in light of the prosecution policy that the NPA operates under, in light of the available evidence and other factors. So I think, they're acutely aware that there is public spotlight on them, and that's why I think they've moved with the speed that they have in the last few months. And yes, ultimately, we would all like to see the Gupta brothers extradited, brought back to South Africa, and having to face criminal charges in our courts. That's something that is underway. We know the extradition request has been made, and these things unfortunately take time. The NPA is doing that, but they need to make sure that other cases are prosecuted as well.
Yeah. Advocate Thipanyane, we've spoken about work done so far, but of course it goes without saying that a whole lot more work still needs to be done. How confident are you that that will happen when we think about the kind of year the ANC is in and the kind of moves that are likely to be made for all manner of interests?
Well, one is hoping that the right things will be done. But what is more important is us as civil society, we also have to stand up and ensure that, something meaningful is done. But also what is a bit of a concern to me is that, we're not doing that much to protect whistleblowers who played a crucial role in the Zondo Commission. And unfortunately, many of them continue to be victimized by the state itself. So one hopes that the president will really take action against this thing, fix the law to ensure better protection for whistleblowers, but also make sure that the state itself does not continue to victimize whistleblowers, who will continue to play an important role in fixing this mess going forward.
Yeah. Speaking about going forward, there's going to be a lot of interest, of course, in ensuring that history doesn't repeat itself. Advocate Thipanyane, do you reckon we're thinking enough about the measures that need to be in place in order for us not to find ourselves in the similar kind of incident or situation in the next 20 years?
Yeah, I think one thing which is varied here is that also we as citizens went asleep. And we need to be more active in ensuring that, those who represent us in government, in parliament, are doing the right things. It's our country, it's our future as well. So this tragedy has been a major setback as far as our democracy is concerned and the protection of human rights are concerned.
Absolutely. Well, the president has just over a week until he needs to finally say something to Parliament, hopefully giving us some kind of substantive response to the recommendations contained in the State Capture report. Thanks to both our guests for helping us, connect the dots around what we should be thinking about in the lead up to that moment. Lawson Naidoo is Executive Director at CASAC. Advocate Tseliso is the Chairperson of the Southern African Institute for Responsive and Accountable Governance. So both our guests, once again, thanks very much indeed for your time.